also about a guy like Von Miller, who's just been fantastic, and how he can flourish in a system at the 3-4, and they'll move him around and obviously free him up a little bit more.
Well, when I first took the job at A&M, I wanted to go to a 3-4, and I hired Reggie Herring to do that for us. Reggie left before spring ball went to the Dallas Cowboys. They were in the 3-4 up there. I think you misunderstood. I wanted to do it in our place. But anyways, I then went out and hired the best coach I could, a great man in Joe Kynes, and he's a 4-3 guy. Then Joe retired this past year, and then going back to getting into the 3-4, was able to hire DeRuiter, and that win from the Cowboys obviously came down, and he's working with us as well. You know, I always think that the game is about players, not schemes necessarily. And getting the players to fit into the scheme is important. But you know, if you don't have the right players, a 3-4 is not any good. If you don't have the right players, 4-3 is not any good. But I do think our players are more suited to this scheme. I think it's easier to recruit to this scheme than it is in the state of Texas. You'll be able to get safeties, make them outside linebackers make them inside linebackers, and so forth and so on. So I think with the talent level that we have here in the state of Texas, we can get guys to fit our scheme. I think that DeRuiter's done a nice job. For my evaluation in the offseason, when I look to find a coordinator, I want to find someone who's been in the same scheme for a number of years, who every place he's been has had success and brought defenses from one level to the next level. And so he was able to do that. He's a great communicator, high energy, which all defensive coordinators have to be successful. So that's kind of the book on him.
You talk about those players and especially the schemes, and you have one of the best and most talented players coming back on your side in Gerard Johnson, quarterback. He led the Big 12 in total offense a year ago, and when we sat here over the last 2 years, your conversation about him has changed. He looks like his leadership qualities have now finally caught up with his skills and athleticism. Give us your thoughts on what I think is the best quarterback in the preseason in Gerard Johnson.
Well, Gerard, you know, one thing about Gerard, he gets better. He'll say, what do I have to work on? I tell him, and he does it, and he gets better. He just keeps doing things you tell him to do, and I've never jumped out there and sung his praises. I mean, there were different times I wasn't sure. At one point we were talking here if it was going to be Tannehill or him. And, you know, he jumped out there and took charge, and then and Tannehill did his thing as well. But Gerard Johnson is definitely a leader. He does a great job with our kids. They believe in him. They trust him. He can be hard when he needs to be hard, but more so he's politically correct and trying to get guys to do the right thing. And he's very smart. He sees the whole field. You know, I think if you evaluate your quarterbacks, well, what do they see? He doesn't see everything. Sometimes too much. He sees ghosts sometimes. and you know, you guys like screw those quarterback minds. I know you do. And he sees that sometimes and kind of gets spooked out of something. And he should just run the play.
Visiting with Mike Sherman, head coach of the Fighting Texas Aggies, as we talk about this upcoming 2010 season. You mentioned yesterday, and again I refer back to when we were taking part in the panel discussion, you said you're only as good as how the players are and the players that you have around you as well. What excites you most about this particular collection? By the same token, what would be a concern at this point?
Well, my first year at A&M, maybe a transition is tough. And you know, you have a bunch of seniors I didn't recruit, so they obviously felt some friction. I had a different way I did things, so that didn't make my way better, just sort of different. So to take a square peg and try to fit something around into it, it just didn't work sometimes. So some of those guys kind of fell by the wayside a little bit. And next year, as I start to bring more players in, I've had 2 recruiting classes. The next year, I brought some of my players in. We had 18 freshmen play for us, 9 starter for us. And then this year, there's more players on board. Everybody that's here, everybody that walks in that door is bought into how we want to do things. And they're really working hard. I told high school coach this morning, I said, you know, coach, this is the way I feel. I love the guys I work with, my coaches. I love the university, and I love the players I'm working with every day, every one of them. And if that's what you come to work with, I can live with anything. So I'm excited about our team. I'm pleased with how they work, how they go to class, how they take care of the business. They're not perfect by any stretch. They make mistakes, but overall they're pretty good kids and they work hard.
Yeah, and I was starting to say, when you have guys that are willing to do that and do those things, even if right now at a given spot on the football field they might not be giving you exactly which one, if they're trying and you can see it down the road, you have to feel good about the progress.
I do, and I'm at the university when I took the job, I felt like we could recruit to Texas A&M, and there's a bunch of players in the state. and a bunch of players from both Texas and Texas A&M and Oklahoma who comes in here obviously on a regular basis. So I feel like there's enough players that we can get to be competitive in the state against the big boys, and I think we're getting closer and closer.
I got to ask you about Christian Michael. I asked you about your running game and how you feel about him and how he's kind of the focal point of your ground attack.
Well, you know, everything to me starts with the running game. Even though we had the passing stats last year, I mean, if you can't run the football, you can't throw the ball. And the one thing that's consistent in football, if you have a couple backs, you know, biorhythms on a quarterback sometimes, at least twice a year, are not going to be right. He's going to have to be off. He's going to miss his targets. So you better be able to run the football. The thing that doesn't fluctuate too much is your run game. Your run game can be pretty, if it's a consistent, stable, you know, your back gets going, you can be pretty good. So you can't just rely on one or the other. And so our starting point, even though we throw the football, I want to be able to run the football and then play action after that and get the ball down the field vertically. So it's important that we have good backs. Christian Mike last year at this time was 207-pound freshman coming in. Had a little bit of a big head on him at that time, but we kind of squeezed that down and made it fit in that helmet. He's doing a great job, and he really has worked well with Cyrus Gray. Cyrus Gray is a key guy in that room. He keeps everybody together, and love him to death. He does a great job with those running backs. He's like another coach in there. And the two of them share that time. They pull for each other. They compete against each other, but they pull for each other when the other one's on the field. And it's a neat thing to see the unselfishness between the two of them. But Christian Mike going from 207 pounds to 217, he's solid muscle, and I'm excited to see what he does this year. He's going to hang out the ball with me.
I got to ask you one other thing, and that is about with regard to, I know we've gotten a lot of questions about it, about, you know, how close things came to being a completely different landscape for Texas A&M, for all the members of the Big 12 Conference, all of those things. And my initial reaction was say, football coaches coach, and they have to go about the business of preparing their programs and their teams to play. But was it a situation where you had to say something to anyone with regard to where your thoughts, your position was on the status of the Aggie football program and where it would go in terms of the future with regard to conference affiliation?
Well, you know, I look at my job as, you know, I take care of the football team, and they tell me who we're going to play, where we're going to go, how we're going to get there. So, you know, I never looked at it as my right to be able to tell them what they need to do. There's a lot of people at A&M that have been there a long time, that was their job to do. They asked my opinion, and I consider it a privilege that they asked my opinion. I talked to regents, I talked to the president, I talked to the AD, but that was a privilege. And but whatever they decide to do, like I told the president, well, whatever you all decide, I'm with you, we'll go do it, and we'll do it as best we can do it. And I really respect A&M and the administration. I thought they took their time, they did their due diligence, they did their research. And when I listen to the different people talk about directions we may be going, they made a lot of sense. They had done their homework, and they did a lot more homework than I did, and they were ready to make the decision. And I think I kind of laugh sometimes when people on the internet start saying stuff, and these people spend endless hours studying what's the best thing for our players, what's the best thing for our fans, what's the best thing for our program, and they come to a consensus opinion, and then people who think differently, that maybe didn't put the same amount of time in.
That's true. I know they'll get ready to pull you in a different direction. It's always great to see you, and I appreciate it.
It's good to see you guys. Nice to see you guys again.
Coach, one minor question before we leave. I know Brett Favre, we talked about it last year. I want to revisit this topic.
What did I say last year? Did I say he was going to play?
You said he was going to come back.
Yeah,
right. Looks like he's going to come back again this year. Just talk about his year last year after the close relationship you guys had.
Yeah, I thought he just had a phenomenal year. I mean, one thing I'll tell you about Brett Favre, don't tell him he can't do something. Never tell him he can't do. I remember sometimes, like, I'd say you can't throw the ball through the uprights this far away from this angle, and he would do it. So you never tell him he can't do something, because he will do everything he can. The doctors will say, he can't play this week, Mike, he's out, and this I'll be ready. And he'll be ready and have the best. And I remember oftentimes, if he got injured, he'd always have his best game after an injury, which, you know, that's a sign of a great player. You know, he doesn't use his injury for an excuse. So don't ever tell him he can't do something, because he's going to do it. So anybody that says he's not going to play, that means he will play.
Sounds like an Aggie mentality.
and it sounds like nothing that he would do would surprise you.
No, he wouldn't. No, nothing he would do. It would surprise me if he didn't play, because he once told me, he said, you know, you're going to have to tell me not to play, because I won't know. He said, you're going to tell me. And I said, well, you're going to know, because your arm's going to fall off your shoulder and you're going to pick it up and go home. That's going to be end of you playing quarterback. I would hate to think of what he's going to do when he's not playing quarterback. He'll drive his wife crazy.
Coach, we appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, thanks for joining us. That's Mike Sherman, head coach of the Aggies at Texas A&M. We'll continue from the Aggie Market on AM 1300. Did he get the